Nigeria's involvement in global illicit drug trafficking by Hadiza Bagudu. A review of the book Cocaine Hoppers by Jude Oboh. Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa. It is the lion of Africa with a population of over 200 million, and at least three-fifths of that is made up of the youth. Thus provides a large market for any commodity or products that find its way into its shores. In the last decade, drug abuse and trafficking had become extremely popular in the country, and many Nigerians were arrested and even some executed both at home and abroad, while a large portion of its youth and even grown-ups with money have been sucked into the vortex of drug use and abuse. Drug abuse is a serious problem anywhere in the world and has had a devastating impact on Nigeria. According to the book Cocaine Hoppers by Jude Oboh, Nigeria plays a massive role in global cocaine trafficking due to its position as a 1. Consumer country. Its large population and position in Africa makes it a great consumer country, unfortunately a profitable market for drugs as well. Transit country. Due to its geographic location directly across the Atlantic Ocean, it makes it it makes import and export easy. 3. Nigerians in diaspora. Nigerian citizens are spread all over the world. They have a wide reach and influence. Its connection to Latin America and Brazil, and recently its alliance with China, leads to its participation in drug trafficking. Brazil is just another transit country. Cocaine is made in Colombia. Internal unrest, poverty, and corruption are factors that makes it possible for the drug trade to flourish, while the advances in technology and in recent decades advances in technology in the recent decades makes it impossible to stop. Nigeria transitioned from military to democratic government, which hadn't helped with the corruption that breeds criminals and organized gangs. Corrupt elite who seek to enrich themselves fast go into the drug business and coerce or entice poor citizens to traffic the drugs for them in exchange for financial gains. They are the ones responsible for the importation of different types of drugs into the country and the widespread of drug abuse and use among the citizens. According to Obo, Nigeria's history of instability and unrest makes it a ripe territory for the rising drug trade. In the past decades, many Nigerians have been arrested and executed both at home and abroad, and millions of dollars worth of drugs and cash confiscated. Nigeria tops the list of trafficking and user countries in West Africa, and over 170,000 Nigerians are in prison in Europe. Not all cases are reported, so it's hard to get accurate figures. The activities of Nigerian drug traffickers subject many Nigerians to unnecessary humiliations worldwide. Nigeria also export to other countries such as US, UK, Indonesia, and China. According to the UNODC report, illicit drug illicit drugs include cannabis, cocaine, opiates, and amphetamine type stimulants and new psychoactive substances. Trafficking is a worldwide phenomenon. He argued that cocaine was foreign to West Africa until 1970s military area, which was rife with corruption. But the presence of drugs in Nigeria can be traced all the way back, even further, all the way to World War II, when returnee veterans brought cannabis into the country. Slavery and colonialism are also culprits, and even speculation of some of the missionaries being guilty of the crime of introducing illicit drugs to Africa. By 2022, Nigeria stands as one of the top trafficking countries in the world. Between January 2021 and August 2022, according to Channels TV, the NDLEA has secured 3,111 convictions and seized 5.4 million kilograms of illicit substances and has had brief interventions, counseling, and rehabilitations for over 12,326 drug users. The epidemic of drug abuse in northern Nigeria. Growing up in Yola, Adamawa State, a very conservative part of northern Nigeria, narcotics and illicit drugs were something I only see on movies and TV. It is not something that I ever thought would find its way to my state. However, by 2022, it is so widespread that many of our youth have fallen victims to drug abuse, robbing them of their future and destroying our society. Many were introduced to it through friends in secondary schools and they succumb to peer pressure. Some come from broken homes and found solace in drugs. Women and girls who are usually victims of forced or unhappy marriages are also not left behind. Access. Pharmacists have become greedy and they release pharmaceuticals easily without prescription. You can walk into any of the thousands of pharmacies in the north and buy prescription medication without any prescription from a doctor. Very few pharmacies will insist on one as they value money over protocol, and the regulatory bodies are either inept or too corrupt to stop it. Some of the drugs widely taken are rethanol, codeine, diazepam, Exol, D5 silver, tramadol, painkillers, Benelin. Those can easily be gotten from the pharmacies, while hard drugs like cocaine, cannabis, and heroin, otherwise known as wee, can be brought from drug dealers. Some of the youth that cannot afford the expensive drugs resort to other unconventional methods of getting high, such as soaking roasted nails in water overnight and drinking the water to get high, or sniffing soakaways and soaking rags in dirty pit toilets or gutters and then sniffing them to get high on the methane. What are the causes? Well, a lot of factors are to be blamed for the monumental rise in the state of drug abuse in northern Nigeria, and poverty and lack of employment are at the top of that list. Nigeria is a country with a large population of over 200 million people, and most of its youth are unemployed. According to an article in Daily Trust of August 30th, 2022, National Drug Law Enforcement Agency (NDLEA) has said that there is about 14.3 million Nigerians that are abusing drugs in the country, while 3 million of them are already dependent on drugs. A large percentage of those drug abusers were youth and women in the country, particularly in northern Nigeria. That is alarming. Many of them come from poor or broken and unhappy homes. Lack of parental care and guidance, peer pressure in schools, high cost of living and unemployment, leading to depression and the feeling of worthlessness. The girls and women are mostly victims of forced or unhappy marriages. Society exerts a lot of pressure on girls to marry and pushes them into abusive homes. Some manage to get divorced, but then they will still have to deal with the stigmatization from the same society. They all find solace in the pleasurable escape that the drugs provide them. It is born out of a cry for help, and many try to stop it subsequently, but their bodies have become so adapted and dependent on the drugs that they cannot stop. Negligence of authorities involved is another factor, making the spread easier and faster. Most of the drugs mentioned above are easily brought from pharmacies without any prescription. They only care about money and hardly regulate the use of it. Corruption from police officers who are tasked with the arresting and prosecuting offenders, and the involvement of some of high-profile citizens in the importation and distribution of the drugs makes it extremely hard to control. There is a lot of money to be made in the selling and distribution of the drugs, and demand is highly dependent on the addiction of the youth. That is why some of the well some of the well-to-do are involved in it. Solution. So what is the way forward? Number one, we should focus on the human aspect. There should be a difference in how the authorities deal with dealers and users. Users are the victims. They are addicted and cannot help themselves. They need help and rehabilitation and not arrest. When thrown in jails for their addiction, they only get worse because they meet corrupt individuals who now then take advantage of them. And even though they stay away from the drugs while in prison, it only makes them crave more for it. And as soon as they get out, they overdose. Therefore, when arrested, they should be taken into rehabilitation. They should be taken to rehabilitation centers and given therapy. Dealers, on the other hand, are the ones corrupting the society. They should face the full wrath of the law. Pharmacies should be regulated and violators of the law should be punished regardless of status. Number two, parents and teachers Parents, teachers, and caregivers should be educated on how to recognize early detection or on how to recognize early drug use in their wards and how to react. Guardian counselors should be trained on the issue and supported. Government should create and fund organizations and NGOs who will go to schools and homes to educate the public on the issue of drugs and how to deal with addicts and addiction. Government should also create meaningful employment opportunities and programs to keep youth engaged and off the streets. The youth are full of energy, and if that energy is not directed at something productive, they can easily be misguided and used by corrupt individuals for for nefarious purposes. Drugs is one way they control the youth, and blow their good judgment to do anything they want. So keeping them occupied and off the street, either through employment or recreational activities, is one way to curb the menace of drug abuse among youth in northern Nigeria. Places of worship should also organize programs to help their members and keep the youth busy. They should also provide counseling and mentoring. Number four, government should regulate prices of food and commodities to curb rising inflation to help the poor. As I stated earlier, poverty is one of the leading causes of drug abuse among the youth. Inflation is an ever-rising thing in the country, and marketers make all the rules with no regulations from the government. That will only lead to disaster unless the government takes steps to control the situation. Things will only get worse. Number five, we should take the issue of mental health seriously. People should be educated on the issue of therapists and encouraged to go for counseling. They should understand that not everything is a spiritual problem and that medical intervention may be the way to go. Hospitals should have rehabilitation sections which should be funded by the government to make it affordable for the poor. Those rehabilitation centers should also be rehabilitated by the NDLEA and relevant authorities. The issue of bullying and harassment in rehabilitation centers should be addressed as well. And number six, parents should pay attention to what their children are doing at all times, the company they keep, and question whatever they bring home. Authorities and religious bodies should regulate marriage and divorce, and most especially custody of children, to ensure that children of divorce are taken care of to prevent them from falling victims to abusers. The issue of almajiri and almajiriship should also be checked and regulated. In conclusion, drug trafficking is a global problem, and Nigeria has made significant efforts in the past 2 years in tackling the issue and has recorded unprecedented success in the arrest and rehabilitation of culprits. Through collaborating with African countries, Nigeria is winning the war against drug abuse and illicit drug trafficking. More effort is still required to curb the menace at home, but with cooperation from all of us, there is hope for the future. Thank you very much. If you like what you hear, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you.